we learned the Mishnah. The Mishnah has different opinions as to when a person can begin reciting the Shema in the morning, and until when a person can say the Shema. And then the Gemara brought other opinions as well. And let's go through these different opinions. So the Mishnah said that the beginning time was either when a person can recognize the difference when there's no external light, artificial light, but when he's relying on the sunlight, and he can tell the difference between either blue and white or blue and green. And there were different opinions what that means. Is it the blue and white of a garment, or the blue and white where the garment didn't get fully absorb the color of the dye, or is it the blue and white of the tzitzis that, when you wrap around the strings of the tzitzis? So the way it's supposed to be is that there's a blue string, or according to some opinions, 2 blue strings, and can you tell the difference between these tiny strings that are right next to each other, the blue and the white? So that's the different of opinion, Rashi and Teves here, but that's basically the time that person could start saying the Shema according to that opinion in the Mishnah. Mishiyakir ben Tchelas Lavan was that opinion. The other opinion was blue and green, and the Tchelas, which we're not really sure what color it is because we don't have it now, but it's somewhere bluish green. Comparing that to Karti, which I translated as leeks, and I still think that's what it is, although we didn't prove it from any of the. I have to look up in a more modern dictionary just to see if Karti actually literally means leeks. I think it does. And the time to finish Shema, the Mishnah said either until Netzachama, which is sunrise, or until 3 hours of the day, which is when kings get up. And then the Mishnah concluded that if a person recites the Shema after that, it's like he's reading the Torah. And the simple meaning of that is that what happens if you miss the time of saying the Shema, but you still want to daven afterwards. So the Brochos, the blessings of Shema, you still have time to recite after the time of Shema ends. So again, we hold the halacha follows this view that you have until 3 hours of the day to say Shema. Let me just mute everyone. You have 3 hours in the day to say Shema, but you do have an extra hour to say the blessings of the Shema and the Shemona Esrei. And if you miss that, you can still say it until midday, until noon. You could say but what do you do about the Shema? So the Mishnah concludes and says, you said the brachas of the Shema afterwards. If you say the Shema also, it's no worse than reading the Torah, meaning that even though you missed out in the mitzvah of Shema, you still are fulfilling the mitzvah of studying Torah, just reciting the words of Shema. So when you're davening late and you miss the Shema, say Shema anyway. You include Shema even though you missed the official time for Shema. Now, this is only a after the fact type of law. Initially, I'm sure everyone tries to say the Shema. Every man, at least women are not obligated, but men are obligated to say the Shema within the first 3 hours of the day. So it's very important to always try to recite Shema when you wake up and say the morning blessings. Person should say the Shema then, or if he goes to shul at a minyan that's normal time, he's fine. But if you're not going to go to shul, make sure to say the Shema in the first 3 hours. It's a biblical obligation. This is a mitzvah from the Torah. It's just like putting tefillin on, just like keeping Shabbos, and just like eating matzah on Pesach. This is a mitzvah from the Torah to say Shema in the first 3 hours of the day. Now, the Gemara brought a few other opinions. We had Reb Meir said when do you say the Shema? Well, when you recognize the difference between a dog and a wolf and a dog. Rabbi Akiva said between a wild donkey and a regular donkey. Then we also had the opinion of Mishayira Eschavera, when you see your friend 4 ames away and you can recognize him. And that's called the time of Mishayakir. And that's what we mentioned, that's the official time to start saying that's the official time to start saying Shema, but also for Tefillin and for Talis. And then we talked about Vasikin, that the people who beautify the mitzvah, the ones who are pious and they mechabev the mitzvahs, they love the mitzvahs, humble people, different translations. I saw the commentaries talk about what the word Vasikin means. There are other views, but we mentioned Rashi, that it just uses the term someone who loves mitzvahs, and mentioned that they try to daven Shemona Esrei with Netzach Chama, so they say Shema right before, and they don't interrupt between the Geula and the Tefillah, between the blessing of Go'al Yisrael and the Tefillah. And then we mentioned that that if you are soymech geula to tefillah, you won't get damaged that whole day. If you put geula, the blessing, Go'al Yisrael, and the Shemona Esrei right next to each other, you don't interrupt, you won't get damaged the whole day. And we mentioned, of course, that means that you also do it at the nates, at the sunrise. So in other words, you're including sunrise and you're not making sure, then you won't get damaged all day. And the commentaries discuss if it means spiritually or physically, but the Gemara seems to say it's referring to physically, because the Gemara says, what someone asked, what about me? I got hurt. I did Geula to Tefillah and I got hurt. So the Gemara answered, what do you call hurt? You had to pay, you had to bring a present, and the present that it's referring to is the asa. Asa means hadassim, myrtle branches. I guess in those days that was considered like a present. You brought some myrtle branches to the king. So he said, I got damaged. I had to bring these I had to bring a present. I had to bring myrtle branches to the king, and the rabbi who said this, Rabbi Yossi ben Al Yakum, he answered him back. He says, that's called damaged. That's a good thing. It's a mitzvah. You're supposed to go and run towards Jewish kings and even non-Jewish kings in order to be recognized, the difference between the honor that the non-Jewish kings have today in today's day and age, and the Jewish kings. You'll see what they have when Mashiach comes, and then you'll realize, then you'll really see the difference. So that's that was the Gemara that we learned yesterday. Now, I wanted to mention a few things. First of all, the Gemara here said, interesting term. It said, you should have even paid. You should have paid money to see the king because it's a mitzvah. I don't know if you caught on to those words, but it said it. It said, Hasam nami mi boilach. There also you should have lemehav egra, to pay a fee lemechzayapi malka, to see the king. In other words, that the Gemara doesn't just say it's a mitzvah, but it emphasizes that you should have even paid money to see the king. So the commentaries bring from a Zohar. The Zohar says, this is very interesting. The Zohar says that mitzvahs that a person does for free are able to be connected, are able to be owned by the shell, the klipa called chinam. That means that one of the klipas, one of the impurities, which in Kabbalah is called the shell, is called chinam, free, a freebie. We all love freebies, but when it comes to mitzvahs, we're supposed to want to pay. And that's why the Gemara uses this term. The commentary is called Shara Mitziyana Balachi, connects it with the with this. He brings from the Magid Taluma, which is another sefer, which connects it with the Zohar and Parshas Truma, that the Zohar says that any mitzvah that person does for free, it's possible to be, the shell called klipa is going to take ownership over that mitzvah. And he says, I know of people of holy people, that even when they gave them an honor in the shul, they would make sure to give tzedakah in order that it's not considered a freebie. And that's the meaning of this word. You should have had to pay in order to do that mitzvah. He also brings from a tshuva from a Chavos Yair, which is a famous halacha sefer. He says, any mitzvah a person should be mahader, to beautify, to pay with his money and not take it for free, even if what you get for free might even be nicer than what you buy, better to buy. And very interesting that it mentions this here, and it's hinted to.
Rabbi?
Yes, Ben.
Where did you find it in the Gemara?
In the
Did
Gemara,
you find it in the Gemara?
Yeah, well, it's based on the Gemara we learned, which is about 25 lines up from the bottom. The last word on the line is igra. Igra is the last word on the line, about 20 lines up from the bottom. It says, Mi boilach lemehav igra lemechzei api malka.
I don't see it in my Talmud.
Which one do you have?
The Steinsaltz.
Well, in the Steinsaltz, do you see the names?
Is it Keta Gimel, Keta Daled?
I'm not sure, but it's. Do you see one that starts with Hayid Reb Yosi ben Al Yakum? Hayid Reb Yosi ben Al Yakum.
Eliakim.
Yeah.
Eliakim.
Yeah, you see that? Mishum Kahala Kadisha. Yeah. So on the next line after that, it says, or two lines later. Yeah. Keep on going. 2 more lines. Keep going.
Ana samchi ve'itazaki.
Okay.
Amar lei b'mai
Itzakta.
Itazakt. De'amtiat.
Asa lebei malka. And now it says this line.
Asa lebei malka. That's the line.
That's okay. Hadassim. You had to bring Hadassim to the king. Hasam nami mi bailach lemehav igra. That's the words. Hasam nami. Continue.
Hatam nami mi bailach lemehav
igra.
Agra.
Yep.
Lemechezei
apei
malka.
Okay, that's it. Those are the words.
Okay.
Lemehav igra.
Thank you. Okay, so that's you gave a translation. That's why I couldn't find it. Because
right. I mean, yesterday we read it inside. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's that thing. Okay. The other thing is, it's interesting. It's brought in Shulchan Aruch that I see in chapter 224. The Shulchan Aruch says a person. It's a mitzvah to try to see kings, afilu malchei ovdei kechavim. In Shulchan Aruch, even to see the kings of Goyim. And that's based on our Gemara. And it's brought even a kohen is allowed to make himself impure rabbinically in order to see the kings. And the Rambam brings it down. He says a mutter for a kohen to be metame, to become impure for a dvar mitzvah. And to...
Rabbi,
yes.
I think it says for the reason that you should see the difference between the kings of Israel and the kings of the other nations.
Yeah. That's the reason for it. In order to go to a king, even a Goyish king, a kohen would be allowed to jump on the aron of Mason of course, biblically it's permitted, but rabbinically that would be prohibited. But they would be allowed to, and the reason is, as you just said, which is our Gemara, to know the difference between the honor that the Yidden, the Jewish kings, will have in the future, in the time of Mashiach.
Okay.
So this is based on our Gemara. So these are interesting insights that are connected to the Gemara we learned. Okay, we are holding Amar Lei Rabbi Ila'a Le'ula. So this is about 15 lines up from the bottom. Rabbi Ila'a said to Ula, or I see on the side there's another girsa, maybe Rabbi Elazar said to Ula. Ki ayeles lahasam, when you go over there, when you go up to there, which generally means going up to Israel, I guess Ula was traveling to Israel. He said, Sho'il b'shloima de Rav Bruna. You should ask about the welfare of Rav Bruna Achi, my brother. The Maimad Kol HaChabura, amongst the entire group. The Adam Gadolhu, he is a great person. V'samach b'mitzvahs, and he enjoys doing mitzvahs. So give him honor by asking about his welfare in front of everyone. He's my brother, and that's what he said. And he mentioned Zimna Choda. In one time, my brother Samach Geula L'Tfila, he prayed the Shemona Esrei, and he said the blessing Goal Yisrael right next to the Shemona Esrei without interrupting. And what happened? And a smile did not leave his face, his lips, a whole day. In other words, he was so happy that he did this special mitzvah. And if Tosfos says, of course, we're talking about that everyone does this, it says Shemona Esrei without interrupting, but it means he davened at Nates and did that. And so when he davened at the Nates, and he also was Samach Kula to Tefillah, so he was happy a whole day. So he was Samach b'mitzvah. And so the Gemara says, Heichi Matzi Samach, how could a person fulfill that of reciting the mitzvah, reciting the Shemona Esrei, right next to the bracha of Goal Yisrael? We know that you're supposed to interrupt with Hashem Sefasai Tiftach. So the Gemara asks, how could a person ever do that? Didn't Rabbi Yochanan say, Hashem Sefasai Tiftach, in the beginning of the Shemona Esrei, of the morning, the Amidah prayer, a person says, Hashem Sefasai Tiftach. And in the end, he says, it should, may it be your desire, the words of my mouth. It's a verse that we say in the end of the davening. Amar Rebbe Lazar tehei b'tefillah shel arvis. So Rebbe Lazar says that it's not a question. You're asking me a question that how did Rabbi Yala'a, how did Rabbi Bruna say Geula to tefillah without interruption? Didn't he? Rabbi Yochanan says you're supposed to say a verse in between. So how could he have done that? How could he have said Geula and Tefillah right next to each other without interruption? Rabbi Yochanan says you got to say the Hashem Sefasai Tiftach verse. So the Gemara answers, Tehei b'tefillah shel arvis. It'll be applicable for the prayer of the evening. So we were just saying that how is it possible to connect the Geula and Tefillah if you have to say this blessing of Hashem Sefasai Tiftach? So the Gemara answered, Amar Rebbe Lazar tehei b'tefillah shel arvis. Let's say that we're talking about the Tefillah of Arvis, the evening Tefillah, and that's what we're referring to. That Reb that Rabbi Yochanan says that you should say this verse, Hashem Sfasai Tiftach, it's in the evening. Why would he be talking only in the evening? What about the morning? Why wouldn't you want to
say
stay
it in Mincha too?
In Mincha. But why would we think that he would say it in the evening? So the Gemara is thinking that in the evening, you don't need to connect Geula and Tefillah. Why not? Why don't you need to connect Geula and Tefillah in the evening? Because, number one, we just learned that when was the redemption? When was the main redemption? In the morning. So the real redemption, even though we do say the bracha Gal Yisrael, but the main redemption is not in the evening, it's in the morning. When did they leave? They left in the morning. Mimachras HaPesach Yatzu Yisrael B'nei Yisrael, and therefore it would make sense to do it in the morning. In the evening, there's more. The main geula didn't happen. Now we mentioned, of course, Paroi gave us permission to leave in the evening, but when did we physically leave? Is in the morning. That's one point. The other point is that at this point in the Gemara, it doesn't. It seems that we interrupt anyway in the evening because of Hashkivenu. So the Gemara thinks that in the evening you can say Hashem Sfasai Tiftach, but in the morning you're supposed to be Soimech Geula Tefillah. Therefore, you should. Since you're supposed to be Soimech Geula Tefillah, therefore you should. You should not say Hashem Sfasai Tiftach, and you'll be able to put Geula, the blessing, Goal Yisrael, and the Shemona Esrei right next to each other. That's what the Gemara is thinking now. But the Gemara says, who is a person who deserves the world to come? This is someone who makes the redemption of the evening close to the redemption of the bracha of redemption of the evening, close to the Shemona Esrei of the evening. So it is talking about that you're supposed to be Soimech Geula Tefillah even in the evening. So it sounds like a real contradiction, because who's the one who says that you're supposed to say Hashem Sfasai Tiftach? It's Rabbi Yochanan himself, who also says that in the evening you're supposed to do the Geula and Tefillah next to each other without interruption. So when are you supposed to interrupt? So Amar Rebbe Elazar, it's not a problem. Rabbi Yochanan is talking about in one davening at mincha time. Tehei b'tfilas ha-mincha. At mincha time you say Hashem Sfasei Tiftach, and the other prayers you have to put Geula and Tefillah next to each other. Don't say Hashem Sfasei Tiftach. This is Ben's answer. Rebbe Elazar said you were mechaven to his answer that the time to say Hashem Sfasei Tiftach is mincha. But Rav Ashi says no, it's not a problem at all, because we learned this actually. Afilu tema akulu. You could even say it refers to all of the prayers. V'kivan dekavor abanan b'tfila kitfila arichta damya. That since the rabbis established it in the davening, it's considered like a long davening. In other words, it's part of the Shemona Esrei. Why is it part of the Shemona Esrei? If you're not going to say that it's part of the Shemona Esrei, then how do you do the smicha, the closeness of Geula to Tefillah in Ma'ariv? You need to say Hashkivenu. So how does it work? Ella, rather, Kivan Takino Rabbanan Hashkivenu. Since the rabbis established the law, you're supposed to say Hashkivenu. It's Geula Arichta Damya. They said Hashkivenu is like part of the redemption. And therefore, if it's like part of the redemption, so Hachanami Kivan Kavor Rabbanan B'Tefillah Ketfillah Arichta Damya. Also here, since the rabbis established Hashem Sfasei Tiftach in the davening, it's like part of the davening. So again, Hashkivenu is a continuation of the Geula, the redemption. Hashem Sfasei Tiftach is like a expansion of the Shemona Esrei. So when you put the Hashkivenu next to the Hashem Sfasei Tiftach, And that's also called putting geula to tefillah. You're really putting the bracha of geula next to the Shemona Esrei because this is just an extension of that bracha, and that's an extension of the tefillah. So you have the extensions are put right next to each other. It's considered it's all close to each other, and therefore it's not only by mincha, by all the tefillahs you're supposed to say Hashem Sfasei Tiftach V'Yagid Zera, and it's not considered an interruption. It's called putting close the geula and tefillah, and so that basically is the answer of the Gemara. Let's see. Okay, the Gemara continues with one more point, but we're going to stop here. It's already 11:02. Have a wonderful day, everyone.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you very much. Nice day.